Hi, this is Bruce and welcome to my tutorial on the Milviz DHC3 Turbo Otter from a cold and dark state to taxi ready. I'm using P3D version 4.3, Active Sky for the weather, P3D's traffic as well as Ultimate Traffic Live for the aircraft outside. I'm on Windows 10, SSD drive, i5 is overclocked, NVIDIA GTX 1070 for those that are wanting to know. I'm going to take us now just briefly through a quick series of sequential steps. Starting on the outside, I've got two of the doors open just to make the viewing a little bit more brevet. So let's go ahead then and take off the reds. We'll go up to the add-ons, left clicking down to DHC3, toggle cold cover. Then we're going to go down again to do the same thing, get the reds removed so our pitot tubes can actually respond, and then toggle the anchors and such, the chocks. Then if we wanted to, Shift E opens up the pilot's door like this. Shift E2 would open up the co-pilots. As you can see, they all work. I'm going to go ahead then and try and close these other doors. It's definitely a little bit of a touchy situation where you've got to hit the sequencing numbers and letters just so. And we'll see if I can do that one more time. Hey, there we go. Wonderful. Love the colors on this. The leading wing edges show wear and tear and dirt and things. Really nice, nicely done by Milviz. So let's go ahead and pop in then. We're going to go ahead and set the parking brake with a left click right here on this. We're going to get rid of the yoke by clicking the base, or we can click the yoke handles themselves like so. If you want it back, just click the base again and up it pops. So we'll leave it away just for visibility purposes. I want to also describe briefly what these gauges are doing. You've got your torque here for the torque on the prop shaft, and it's going to run right up around here for me on cruising flight. The ITT gauge is the interstage turbine pressure, or the turbine temperatures rather, that gives me the relative temp of the exhaust as it gets into the first stage of the turbine inlet guide vanes, and it's going to run less than that red mark right there, so keep it definitely in the green. If these two get out of hand, your engine's going to quit shortly after takeoff, and it won't be long. And then here are the prop RPMs. That's the propeller shaft. And there must be a little bit of a glitch yet in this architecture, you could say, in the software, because it'll peg out on 25 for me, and there's no way, no matter what I do, that it'll change in flight. But it will drop back if I pull the power off. It's just not a very sensitive one, so ultimately I just run with these two. When these two are in good conditions, I know that would be two, so I'll let it run with that. And then the gas generator, this is where the power of the aircraft is actually produced from. It's a gauge that tells us if the gas generator shaft is normally between 52.6 and 101.6, right in that area there, the percentage of RPMs. And it's influenced by the power lever, so we'll see that alternate. And the power lever also affects these two. Then there are some friction control knobs on this aircraft. It's the only one I know of that actually works. The forums were suggesting leaving these each at 55%, which I can see on a little pop-up on my window. It will not show in the video, but 55% helps prevent controller spikes or drift. And it doesn't stop it, but it slows it down. And if you put it up to 100, you can't move these levers at all. So they actually do work in their own way. And then just a couple other things. This fuel selector here is actually not what you'd imagine. It's a transfer lever. So when it's off, the fuel is always pulled from the center tank in this aircraft. The only way, or the only reason why you would want to turn it to front or rear is when the center tank is getting low, around 60 and no less than 40. This little low fuel level light will light up. That's a good visual reminder. Then if you right click it, it goes to the rear, or if you left click it, it goes to the front. But in general, you're going to leave it in the off position, and there's no such thing as both or anything. These will then be draining into the center tank, which then feeds the engine. And when you do that, your fuel pumps need to be on. So whenever you're transferring, make sure that not just one but two are on. The emergency fuel oil shutoff right here requires a center mouse wheel click. That's a safety feature. And then these switches down here, there are 4 of them, as you can see, these little silver ones. This is the inverter switch, so when it's up, it's on. The next one says TNS. You can't quite read it because that's in the way, but it says TNS, and that's the turn coordinator power, on or off. And then the comp is the directional gyro, on or off, and then the one is slaved or freed, and down is in the free position, up is in the slave position for the gyro. And I think that covers a lot of things, except for back here if you're looking through the check sheet, you may be wondering, well, where is the generator switch? And it's actually right here behind the co-pilot seat, and it's always to be left on anyway, so it's a good place to leave it. And also you can see the fuse banks are in there as well. If this was an amphib, here's your rudder release and all that right there. Here's your trim. That red mark should be at the nearly at the point of the takeoff setting right there. I like it a little nose down. I've noticed if you put it right on the point, it's a bit too nose high, and I end up scrambling trying to get the nose down with the trim. Interior lights, dimming, brightening, and then here's some air for the cabin. I think that is pretty much all the little quirky things associated with this aircraft right there. Except there is one right here. I should mention it now before we get started. On your condition lever, there's really only two functional positions, off and on. There, the higher you go, it doesn't change anything. So bringing this back to run, clear to the back to run, doesn't change anything. So you would take the guard off with a left click, you'd run it up to run, then you can put the guard back behind it like so, and really honestly that's all you need to do. And then to bring it down is to shut off the engine. So it's just basically think of it as an on-off lever, and that's in concert with the real-world aircraft, I'm told. So let's press on. Parking brake is on. Flight controls are now free. We got those chocks and things removed. That's the key feature there. We've looked at our trim. Our switches are off, except the generator switch was always on, which is behind the co-pilot seat, so we never really need to look at it anyway. The condition lever is at idle cutoff. The fuel emergency shutoff, that red knob here, is in. Inverter switch now is on. Fuel transfer selector should be down, off. The flight instruments, we can check the altimeter. We can set with the B on the keyboard, or you can do it with the mouse wheel here, calibrating it that way, but B is just so much simpler. Master switch is right here. We're going to go ahead and turn that on now. Fuel quantity we can check. This is the front, this is the center, that's the rear. Needles to the top, they're all full. Doors are closed. Power lever is here at idle. Standby emergency lever here is wired off, we don't need it. Prop control then will move up to the increased position, which is clear to the top. If you're having trouble getting it to go clear to the top, just use your mouse wheel and move it just that little extra bit. Then we're going to go ahead and get our engine started, but we need to let folks know that we're alive in here. So we'll click on the nav light. Now if you look closely, I think I finally figured it out on some of these. I read or found in the forum that there are two nav lights. I'm going to move that up just to get out of the way. See nav lights, nav lights? When this is up, the nav lights are on, and when this is down, with a right click, the nav lights are on. It does the same thing. Apparently there's a redundancy between these two, so if one shorts out, the other one works. But just to let folks know we're alive and active in here, we'll hit the nav lights, and then we've got our beacon right here, and since we're going to be starting our engines, we're going to put the beacon on to let folks know we're going to be moving shortly. Alright, let's go ahead and turn our nav master switch on so we can use our radios a little bit later. And as you can see, all this business here is coming alive. There we go. Going to get some chatter out of that. Maybe I can get our Garmin to work like it should. Earlier it was being a little fussy. I'm not sure we're going to see that improved. No, we're stuck for now. Occasionally that does hang up. It's been mentioned in the forums. That's the Flight 1 750-650. Normally it works. On a rare occasion, it doesn't. You just got a sample of when it doesn't. Okay, we're going to then click on or make sure our heat is cool here, and it is. Our fuel pumps then, we can turn 2 on. You can see the pressure going up, and then if you do one more, it goes up even further. I do both. You can turn them off if you want to, but I see no harm done when they're both on. We're going to turn our heat on. There's heater, ignition, and starter. Lift the covers with a left click. Then we're going to flip those switches like so. That's off right there, right? So we're going to turn it on, and the ignition can be turned on, and then we're going to go ahead and click the starter. Now we'll watch the NG. When it gets to 12, right there, we're going to run the condition lever up to run, and then put the cover to protect it from shutting off below it. I did that with a left click. Now it should catch just fine. We just wait a second. I'm going to go ahead and click barometer here to get rid of that flashing barometer. And at that point too, then we can put in our altitude that we're choosing to climb to, and then when we're in the air, You can hold the AP button. Just clicking the AP button won't engage it. You got to hold it, and then it'll engage on the roll. Just hit heading or nav, and then I like to hit arm, and then hit the up and down for vertical climb or descent, rate of climb. So that then will bring you to that altitude when you hit arm. You don't even have to think about it. Okay, the ignition light is on, so I'm going to click off the ignition switch inside, close the cover. We don't need the starter on anymore, so I'm going to close that cover. And then we're going to leave the P3 heater on for now. Otherwise, the P3 heater light will light up, and I'm just trying to keep everything at off condition there. No enunciations. The ski switch here is actually your steering. This will lock the tail wheel in the first left click. So the tail wheel now is locked in a straight position. One more left click, you see this other light come on? That gives us our ground steering. And you'll do that until you're lined up on the runway, and then you'll right click the switch and twice and drop that right off for takeoff, okay? So that's an important feature too. That then is about all there is to it. For taxiing, not only do we set our comms and our nav and everything and make sure our Garmin is actually working, but up here is where you'll see your flaps indicated. It's hiding. There's a little red mark, and it's disappeared behind this black feature here. Just left clicking it, you can see it's come down from hiding. For taxiing, you can leave it up in the cruise position, and then when you line up on the runway, take off land position right here. That's where you want to be. And then on climb out, you can leave it here. I find though that sometimes if you leave it on climb too long, it really cuts into your power or airspeed. So I bring it up to the cruise, and I haven't had any issues with stalling or anything. I just have a pretty easy going rated climb. Now that's about all I can think of right now. It's a really nice short introduction to this, and I hope that you enjoy this aircraft. Any comments are really appreciated. We're all learning from each other, and thank you for watching. Have fun in the skies. Take care. Bye-bye.